today is just loving our unity. Now, in Science of Mind, for those of you who've been around, the Science of Mind is our philosophy. Dr. Ernest Holmes is our founder. We call our affirmative prayer spiritual mind treatment. Why do we call it spiritual mind treatment? Because it is a treatment of our mind. Again, to let go and to rediscover our truth. And we use Science of Mind 5 steps, and I'm just going to review the 2 steps today, which are very appropriate for just loving our unity. So, what is the first step? They need to hear you. Recognition. So the first step is identifying your higher power, whatever name you give it. Now, I was born and raised Catholic, so I'm okay with the word God. Although God for some is this anthropomorphic being with judgment. And so for others, it might be universal spirit, higher power, source, whatever works for you. Because it's you that's developing your relationship with your inner wisdom. So what do you want to call that higher power for yourself? And what are its characteristics? So I'm just going to start out by sections. And again, speak up so that the microphones can hear you. Can you over here give me some examples of what you use for your identity of this higher power and its characteristics? Omniscience. It is omniscient, meaning all-knowing. Anything else over there? Come on, I see some practitioners. Spirit. You feel good with spirit, so do I. Divine intelligence, so both a name as well as a characteristic. Yes? Light. What else? Now this section.
Magnificent spirit.
Magnificence.
Spirit.
Magnificent spirit. Beautiful.
The great mystery.
The great mystery, because it's so big, it is even beyond comprehension. The suns, the moon, and how it all works. Anything else? Love, the great spirit.
The large pumpkin.
The large pumpkin. Or in somebody's case that we know here, fluffy stuff. How about here? Source.
Divine source.
Divine source.
Mother Earth and Father Sky.
Mother Earth and Father Sky.
Universal intelligence.
Universal intelligence.
Mother Nature.
Mother Nature. We all know that the various traditions have tons of names, does it not? And it's yes and. So, one love, one universal power, one source of all life, one universal mind, one universal law. Omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, present everywhere, all-powerful, and many other names. Do you know that Ernest Holmes in the Science of Mind textbook, just in part 1, has 175 names for the thing itself? So there, I have a list, by the way, thanks to Science of Mind practitioners who put this together and went through the Science of Mind textbook. I want to encourage you to find what is that higher power and to develop a relationship like, do you call your partner dear? You call your partner honey? Dear one? What do you call that spirit that is so close it is a part of your every breath? And then know its characteristics, truth, love, light, life. The idea is to use your connection, your heart, and your mind to develop relationship with this recognition of this one source. All right, now what is step 2 of Science of Mind treatment? Unification. Well, isn't that a coincidence? Unification. When we go back to first cause, in other words, what came before all of us and everything before us? First cause. And we think about that magnificent power and life. We then unify ourselves with that source to lift us up, to know a greater truth. You know, the science of mind symbol is a V in a circle. And that's because spirit descends down into form. But you know, sometimes we get stuck at the bottom of the V. We get stuck about the form. And then we need to step back, go back to first cause, and open up to a greater knowing and a greater truth. So your spiritual mission this week, if you choose to accept it, but it'll never expire, is to repeat step 1 and step 2 all week long in everything you do. To bring yourself to the familiarity and a reminder for those that have been practicing for years. What is first cause? What is my connection to that one source? And then I am one with that. Now, I know a lot of people get confused, especially if people don't have a spiritual nature about them. They say, but there's me and there's you and there's us and there's them and there's this and there's that. They say we're a divided nation. But I like to use 2 examples for that. Have you ever heard of the saying, 2 sides of the same coin? And if you shave off both sides of the coin, you still get 2 sides of the same coin. It's still one coin. And if I were to magnify a coin really big and put it in the middle of the aisle here, if you were both looking at one side of the coin, would you see the same thing as the other side? Still one coin. Does this make sense for our nation? That we need the diverse views. The beauty of a diamond is in the multiple facets that ring through the multiple colors. The other example I love to use is, here I am, one body, over 1 trillion cells. Name some of the specialized cells in the body. Heart cells. Stem cells. Blood cells. Brain cells. Neurocells. They all bring their gifts, don't they? Are they exactly the same? Do they each have a purpose and a mission? So it is with you. Now name some systems in the body. Systems. Respiratory. Digestive. Nervous system. Elimination. Digestive system. Endocrine system. Circulatory system. And yet, I am one body. Unification. It is all one. A united wholeness, a unity of the whole. And life is unity of the whole. And as long as millions of people go off looking for division, what are they going to find? Division. And what are we going to look at? Unity. We are going to focus on unity. Just got goosebumps. Like, yeah, that's why we're here today. Love that. Now, what happens if cells start going off and not a part of the law, the universal law, the system? Cancer. This is what can happen to us in our thoughts. And if you watch too much TV or you watch too much social media, yes, I do both of those things. I don't watch a lot of TV, but social media, I need to always remind myself, yes, I'm observing, but I know where my focus is. I know where the truth is. And I want to bring the truth to whatever it is I'm knowing is happening out there. I shine my light wherever I go. And I know that as long as I'm planting the seeds of unity, that seeds in fertile soil grow. The Science of Mind textbook, chapter 6, is man's relationship to the universe. And I'm going to end with a few parts of the Science of Mind textbook on unity. While a drop of water is not the ocean, it does contain within itself all attributes of the limitless deep. When we know our oneness with God and with universal law, what a great burden is removed. Any sense of opposition is removed from the consciousness which perceives unity. If we think of ourselves as being separated from the universe, we shall be limited by this thought, for it is a belief in separation from God, which therefore binds and limits. We are not bound by anything except belief. So free yourself by knowing your truth, unity with all. And again, I invite you to use your creative mind, your imagination, to continue to practice step 1 and step 2 of science of mind treatment. Just love our unity. Reverend Christine.
That was wonderful. Thank you so much. You know, I loved how you were asking what are the names that we call God. And you said we call our beloveds honey or whatever. So I was putting my stuff in the trunk, getting ready to come here. And a car in back of me was driving by and she hollered out, you better get going, Lovey. And I kind of turned around and looked at her and she goes, oh, sorry, not you. It was her son that was walking in the same path I was. So I was Lovey for a moment this morning.
Spirit was speaking.
Spirit was speaking to me. Better get going, Lovey. So I love this idea of loving our unity, and it reminded me of Ernest Holmes' Sermon by the Sea. It would be wonderful indeed if a group of persons should arrive on earth who were for something and against nothing. Find me one person who no longer has any fear of the universe or of God or of man or of anything else, and you will have brought to me someone in whose presence we may sit, and fear shall vanish as clouds before the sunlight. So we have a vision in our community of a world that works for everyone. And that one of the things being here and being in your communities and having the opportunity to hear about the changes that you've experienced is one of the things I recognized is from the campfire and the pandemic is that we found out pretty quickly that church is not just a building, right? Church is not just a building. We are so grateful for the building, and you have a beautiful one here. This is so beautiful, and the energy here is phenomenal. But we know we're grateful for the building, but it's not just a building. We know that it's an organization, CSL is an organization, but it's not limited by the organization. CSL is a legal entity, but we know it's way more than a legal entity. And that what we have together, whether both Paradise and Chico and now coming together in this integration, that the two parts come together as a whole and it's something more, it's something greater. And that this is a divine idea in the mind of God. And that didn't all of this start as a spark? Because inspiration starts as a spark, a moment in time. And that what happens is that you were called here. Do you remember the first time you came to a center and you felt that? I remember it like it was yesterday, and it was many years ago. And I went to that, and they were meeting in a junior high. And I walked in and I sat down, and I grew up Catholic. So, and then I left, as soon as I left my family, I didn't have to be Catholic anymore. So I left there, and then I ended up in Southern California, from the East Coast to Southern California. And I went into that place and I sat down, and something just dropped in me. I knew I was home. And then listening to the talk and seeing everyone and the music, I was home. And that's what happens, is that this is home. This is an inspiration. This is a expression of the divine, an expression of the divine. I do not believe for a moment that any of us randomly came together at a center. Wherever you are, wherever your first place was, or if this is your home now, it was not random. Your soul called you here. Don't you feel that? Your soul called you here. And that you will always be connected. not only in this life, but in lives to come, that we are connected through this connection that we have. And it's these connections that make up the center, what we call church. It makes up our memories, our relationships. And so as we continue our spiritual journey, we continue with the people around us. One of my favorite quotes by Ernest: "Nature will not let us stay in any one place for too long. She will let us stay just long enough to gather the experience necessary for the unfolding and advancement of the soul. This is a wise provision, for should we stay there too long, we would become too set, too rigid, too inflexible. Nature demands change in order that we may advance." So we have an opportunity to embrace the change. Oh, that's much easier to say than it is to do, isn't it? Yeah. Change is always happening, but here's the thing. We're very clever beings. We have interesting ways to resist the change, right? I realized several years ago that I wanted things to change, but I didn't want anything to be any different. Yeah, I don't like the way it is, but don't change anything, okay? Sometimes we like change as a concept rather than a reality. But everything is in a state of change. We're in a divine flow, and there's always change. And it's important to let that in, to open our hearts and our minds to the newness and allow change to happen. See yourself as being open to an open place of receiving that newness. Our human personality wants to see what's ahead, right? I want to know what's going to happen. We can't. We can only take the step that we're on, one step at a time. Acknowledge where you're at. That for those of you from paradise, you're going to feel sadness, some loss. I know you've had years of gone through a couple years of experiencing that. And now you will because of the change. But you're also experiencing something new. Reach out to those around you. There are so many services here, and everyone here is here to love you. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah, I really got that when we walked in.
Just love.
Just love. I really got that. I love the words of Emma Curtis Hopkins. There is good for me, and I ought to have it. Well, I want to change that today. There is love for me, and I ought to have that. Will you say that with me? There is love for me, and I ought to have it. Again, there is love for me, and I ought to have it. So how do we step into newness? I want to give you just a few little tips. Not that you need any, but I like to repeat them. The first one is to practice mindfulness, and that's paying attention, being the observer. That pay attention to what you are thinking and feeling. That the most powerful way we do that is through meditation. But how we recognize spirit is us paying attention to who we are. Know thyself first. So out of knowing thyself, that's my beginning place to step into that greaterness, that greater knowingness of spirit, to release that constant chatter and to be present. Learn not to react, but to respond. So that first one is practice mindfulness. The second one is practice surrender. Oh, these two communities, I know you've practiced this a lot. And Reverend Kathy said resilience. I woke up today thinking how resilient these communities are. But it's hard to stay centered when we're hanging on, right? We can't receive when we're hanging on. But when we let go, we're open and willing to receive. It's an opportunity to release, to let go and see what greater newness there is. The more we hang on, the greater pain we experience. And this is true for the planet. It's not just true here, that we are in such a time of change. everything is changing. But what we know is the changeless. We know the one, just what Reverend Kathy said, the one power, the one presence, the one life, the one source, that one divine inspiration. That is changeless. That is forever. That is the beingness in which we live. And then we know our oneness with that. We know our connection with that. We know our unity with that. So when we surrender into that knowingness, into that newness. And the third is to practice gratitude. How important it is to practice gratitude, because